Hey again everyone, I'm talking Eurovision this time. I'm a huge fan of Eurovision. Eurovision 2012, set in Azerbaijan. They must have won it last year. I don't actually remember last year's terribly well. I imagine that we did badly though, the United Kingdom, usually fairly bad. Haven't won it since 1997. We've won it plenty of times in the 70s and 80s. But since 97 I guess there's been a bit of a general feeling of apathy about it. But really, I'm not sure it's completely necessary to have that. But yeah, it's Eurovision this weekend. I'm looking forward to it very much. And I've just done a bit of research about it, and well, it's going to probably be on live at about 4 a.m. while I'm in Japan, so that's pretty inconvenient. But I'll hopefully try and stay up and try and find a way of watching it somehow. Yeah, I'm genuinely a fan. I love the idea of a sort of 4 hour marathon. I love the voting. I love the way that that's a couple of hours. It's a very cheap night in, really. And it's interesting to get a flavour of a lot of different countries, and it's a fast flowing show as well. I think there are sort of about 25 entries or something that will make it into the final night. Each entry being about 3 minutes long, and everything just goes by really, really fast. And in the past, the British coverage has been fronted by Terry Wogan. This improved a lot of things because he was a very dry, witted, cut through the crap sort of commentator over the course of events, and didn't take everything quite so seriously, and really made everything quite fun. His comments on the other countries, and he would famously sort of predict us doing very badly, and it would prove very much correct. And he would hypothesize that a lot of the countries would be voting based on foreign affairs, showing no ill feelings towards their neighbouring countries despite recently having a war, for example, such as the current trend of voting amongst the Balkan countries. However, Eurovision, for those that haven't yet been introduced to it, it's a yearly event. I think it's taken place for the last 50, 60 years, possibly further into the past, I'm not quite sure. But in any meaningful way, probably the last 50 years. And Europe seems to have expanded, and there are even more entries than ever before. But the previous winner from the previous year hosts the contest of the following year, and around 40 countries have applied, and they go through 2 semi-finals. There's some kind of voting that goes on. I think in recent years they've introduced a system where not only voters from the respective other countries vote, but also there's a sort of experts of the musical industry panel also contribute towards the voting, in a bid to make sure that songs have more success based on their relative merits. I'm not quite sure this has completely worked. It's hard to really decide. It's only been a couple of years, but I'm sure there's evidence to suggest that it has, and it sounds good on paper at least. There'll be the final 25. The United Kingdom is always included amongst 2 or 3 others for their historical contribution towards music generally, and also the United Kingdom also has contributed in the past, and probably continues to do so, quite a bit of finance towards the whole thing anyway. But our entry this time, Englebert Humperdinck, we didn't vote on it because traditionally each respective country has a sort of a show on television a few months prior to determine who's going to represent them in the coming Eurovision contest. We didn't have that. The United Kingdom just announced on the BBC 2 or 3 months ago, we're going to have this guy, deal with it, and so we have. I've not got particularly very high hopes. Englebert Humperdinck, turns out he is British. Did a bit of Wikipediaing, And that research garnered the following result, that he was born in British India, so news to me. I had a feeling he might be American, but I was completely wrong on that front. So he's British, and that's enough. He's representing Britain. Fine. Really no high hopes. He did have a number one in America a long time ago. So some success. Hopefully he's perhaps famous amongst other European countries, and that might get him a few votes. Haven't heard the song. We've been drawn to sing first, and I don't think traditionally that's a very good spot to be had, to be honest. If I was going to sing at any point in the night, I'd sing probably 14th or something, just after the interval. That's what I'd want to do, but I presume it's a natural, randomly drawn process. So we're singing first, and in a way I'm disappointed by that, because I've sort of got, I would have had that to look forward to, and instead it's going to be immediately, and then that's over, and the anticipation is perhaps over. My personal plans surrounding Eurovision are thus: staying up very, very late, possibly alcohol with it. I'm very likely to be watching it on my own, which is a little bit sad. Nobody else really cares to such an extent, but nonetheless should be quite good. But yeah, I don't think we'll do terribly well. The voting, traditionally we never do that well. We haven't got that many friends in the world these days, so that usually counts against us. We had a 5th place recently, but I'm not so sure. But tell you what I have done, very consciously, I've avoided watching any of the semi-finals. I think there was one yesterday, and there might be one today, or something like that. And I've also avoided looking at any, because you can, with enough will, you can do a lot of research into the acts competing of other countries. You can watch all of their music and songs before the event happens, and I think that spoils it. Years ago, I think it was more interesting when you literally had no clue of any of the other acts ever competing, and then on the night it was all a complete surprise, and everything was unveiled there and then, live in front of your eyes, and that's how new acts were kind of found. But I guess a lot of Europe is taking this more and more seriously, and the UK and other countries like that less so. And I've got a bit of a theory behind this. But basically the United Kingdom knows that it's not going to have a good chance of winning. And so there's one thought of logic that suggests, well, don't enter Eurovision, it's embarrassing, you won't do that well, it could ruin your career. So that puts off the established acts. Although I'm sure if we did it, then we'd have a much better chance. But we haven't entered anybody particularly established, unless you count Blue, but their career was already waning big time. And we probably got towards the bottom 5 or something, not very good. But a lot of the rest of the European countries take it very, very seriously. They enter their best acts that have been established for a long time in that part of the world. They have had chart success. They do tours all over Europe, and when they appear on Eurovision, many, many countries have already seen their act before. They already have a following around Europe, and are much more likely to garner votes. Whereas they see some idiot that we've only just found a couple of months prior on some reality show. The UK's only known him for 2 months, and we put him on there, and then we expect anything more than last place. Ridiculous idea. And the United Kingdom still features very prominently on the world scene generally, according to music sales. So, we've got plenty of people that we could just put onto Eurovision. But I think people see Eurovision as a literally like a financial loss. They're not willing to give their songs away like that. They'd rather have a number one and do a big tour and get loads of money, and rather than waste something on a trivial Eurovision night. So it's unlikely that we'll ever win in the near future unless something changes dramatically. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I really don't know what to expect too much. But if it's anything like the last few years, it should be very good. It should be interesting seeing it from a Japanese perspective. Not that it's too much different, but I suppose it's kind of fun watching it in the middle of the night. Good commentary as usual from Graham Norton, who's replaced Terry Wogan. I think he's a fairly good replacement, pretty good stuff. And it's all part of the fun that we're actually not that good. And we should genuinely hear some decent and good music. I quite like most of it. So it's pretty fun, lots of colours, lots of entertainment, and the whole thing's free. It's a lot of fun, and there's something about it as well. It's historical, it's European distinctly, and I think actually the Americans, Canadians and Australians and the rest of the world are actually a little bit jealous. They're completely oblivious to the whole concept for the most part. Those that have asked either haven't heard of it or have very little interest. For those that are interested, let's keep the interest up. I want to see it carry on for a long time. So, good. Azerbaijan, I'm sure will put on a good show. I'm sure they've put a lot of money into it. It should be a very good stage and set. And we'll see what happens. But roll on Saturday night. Come on, Englebert. Let's get last place, shall we? Let's get nil point. I don't know. Probably will. But here's to Eurovision. Another good year.